And welcome to the 10x Rule reading by Grant Cardone. Reading the book, The 10x Rule by Grant Cardone. And thank you for coming back, or welcome if this is your first time. Hi, I'm Don. Been enjoying this book immensely and wanted to just share some wisdoms and insights and what I get from reading the chapters. And hopefully you've gone out and got your copy of the 10x Rule, because it's friggin' awesome. The 10x Rule. I'm a little maimed in my left arm, so I'm using my right arm a little more. Sorry it's a little awkward, but you know, the wing's damaged. We'll be alright. But anyway, so here we are in chapter 10, 10x Rule by Grant Cardone. This chapter is quite interesting. The chapter 10 is Competition is for Sissies. Competition is for sissies. Now, I'm from the competitive world of sports, you know, so I think of competition as, you know, your opponent, the other team, another player, you know. And I realize after reading this chapter, Competition is for Sissies, when you're competing, you're not trying to compete with somebody. You're trying to compete to dominate somebody. You don't want to compete with another team. You're trying to figure out how to compete to dominate another team. And that's what chapter 10 is all about. Dominating the competition, not just competing with the competition. That's why it says competition is for sissies. Because I think we get caught up in the competition of business or your endeavors or of a project. We get caught up in the competition aspect. You're not trying to compete with your competitor. You're trying to dominate your competitor. I mean, that's what it's really all about. You're not lining up and going on the field of play so you can all tie and go home with a participation award. We competed. No, you don't want to compete. You want to dominate. That's the whole point of the game, of life, of sports, of business. You want to dominate your sector. And that's what really chapter 10 is all about. Dominating your sector. Excuse me. Dominating your sector. And there's a quote in this chapter that I really love. It says, "Never play by the agreed upon norms upon which others operate." Never play by the agreed upon norms upon which others operate. You know, and I think in the world of sports, you know, once upon a time, everyone played offense and football the same. You know, line up, you got your fullback, your tailback, your tight end, your wide out, and they all just ran this standard pro set formation. Then along came this guy named Bill Walsh with this thing called the West Coast offense. The West Coast offense capitalize on the weaknesses of the competition, meaning go where your competition isn't. And the West Coast offense became so prolific and made the San Francisco 49ers so dominant that everyone all of a sudden wanted to learn the West Coast offense, and they got rid of that standard old tight end formation, single wideout formation, fullback tight end. And then the fullback all of a sudden became the H-back. Well, that came because of the West Coast offense philosophy, because of one team, because of one coach not wanting to compete but wanting to dominate the competition. And so the West Coast offense came along and dominated the NFL. And then you had, you know, there's other offensive, the run and shoot and so on and so forth. They weren't about competing. They were about finding a formula to dominate. And that's what you want to do in life and in business and in your projects. How do we not compete? How do we dominate the competition? And so that's what chapter 10 is all about. And I'm just going to read through certain parts of this chapter. How do you dominate, you may wonder? How do you dominate, you may wonder? The first step is decide to dominate. Then the best way to dominate is to do what others refuse to do. Such as Bill Walsh with the West Coast offense. Others refuse to use the fullback as anything other than a battering ram fullback for the tailback. Bill Walsh came in and said, hey, why don't we use the fullback as a tight end or an H-back to run out and catch passes. Other teams refuse to use the fullback as anything other than smash the linebacker or be a lead blocker. Bill Walsh came along with this West Coast offense philosophy and said, hey, let's use that fullback to catch passes. And all of a sudden the fullback became an extra receiver, which threw off defenses which were used to just the fullback being a battering ram lead blocker for the tailback. So again, how do you dominate, you may wonder? The first step is to decide to dominate. Then the best way to dominate is to do what others refuse to do. When I think of the bikini was something that was created to dominate the swimwear market. The bikini was two inverted triangles with a string. It was created to dominate the swimwear market because before that it was nice, polite one pieces or very conservative bikinis. They weren't string bikini. The string bikini was created to dominate the swimwear space, and it did it marvelously. The string bikini actually terrorized, as they say, terrorized the swimsuit industry to the point where they tried to make it outlawed. They tried to ban the string bikini because it was so dominant in the swimwear space. And that's another example of how you want to dominate. What can you create? What can you do that others refuse to do? Others refuse to do anything other than a one piece. Along came this inverted triangle string bikini thing, and boom, dominate. The rest is history. How do you dominate, you may wonder? The first step is decide to dominate. Then the best way to dominate is to do what others refuse to do. That's right, do what they will not do. This will allow you to immediately carve out a space for yourself and develop an unfair advantage. Let me be clear, I want an unfair advantage if I can create one. Though I am always ethical, I never play fair. I seek out ways in which I can get an unfair advantage. And one surefire way to do this is to do what others won't do. Find something they cannot do, maybe because of the size of their operation or their commitment to other projects, and then exploit that. Maybe they are cutting back during a time when the economy is uncertain. This would be your moment to expand into those spaces where they are contracting. A company I was working with that was in dental implements, a company I was working with that was in dental implants told me the leader in the field had cut all travel expenses and elected that all client contact is done by phone and over the internet. To get a competitive advantage, we decided to dominate the personal contacts while the leader retreated. Domination, not competition. Never play by the agreed upon norms never play by the agreed upon norms within which others operate. The rules, norms, and traditions of any group or industry are usually traps that prevent new ideas, higher levels of greatness, and domination. In other words, there are people out there who are afraid of competition because they're afraid of being dominated. So, never play by the agreed upon norms within which others operate. The rules, norms, and traditions of any group or industry are usually traps that prevent new ideas, higher levels of greatness, and domination. You can always learn from those who want to compete. Just don't chase them. Sam Walton, founder of Walmart, was said to shop other stores weekly in order to see what they were doing well and improve on that. At the same time, he also had the goal of domination, not competition. If you're going to duplicate the best of what others do, then hammer away at them, champion that practice, and make it yours. Hone their specialties until they become your advantage. Do so to the point where you become the expert and leader in that area and dominate it so incredibly that they no longer even want to attempt it. You don't have to be first to the space, but it is important to be considered first in the space. Repeat, you don't have to be first to the space, but it is important to be considered first in the space. Okay? Think about domination like this. You can't dominate if you don't penetrate. And you won't penetrate by using reasonable levels of activity. Your biggest problem is obscurity. Other people don't know you and aren't thinking about you. So if you want to dominate, get out of obscurity. How can you get out of obscurity? He talks about how he posted on Twitter 48 times a day, every half an hour. Would you be committed to posting on Twitter 48 times a day, every half hour? I had to think about that myself. 48 times on Twitter, yeah. Posting comments on Twitter 48 times a day, once every 30 minutes. That was in an effort to dominate the space that he wanted to dominate using Twitter. Posting on Twitter 48 times a day, once every 30 minutes. I'm going to pose that to you as a challenge. How about that? Who's willing to post on Twitter 48 times a day, once every 30 minutes, in order to dominate? Are you up for the challenge?